How much time do debt collectors have to chase you down for old stale debt? How many years have to pass by before yesterday's mistakes can disappear from tomorrow's worries? My name is Michael Wasylik. I'm a lawyer with Ricardo and Wasylik here in Florida, and together with my partner Jason Ricardo, I help people just like you overcome foreclosure and debt collection with dignity. And today, I'm going to tell you how long you have to wait before yesterday's mistakes vanish from your worries forever. How much time does a debt collector have to pursue you? Now, while we're leading into that, if you have a debt collection question about how much time needs to pass, then go ahead and leave it in the comments below. And if you find this video helpful, like it, share it with somebody else who might need it, and subscribe to the channel to get more content just like this about debt collection, foreclosure, and credit reporting. So with that out of the way, we need to talk about how much time you have. And in order to understand it completely, we need to talk about the three different types of debt collection that you might be experiencing and how those time limits apply to each particular type. So first of all, you have debt collection communications. Those are letters and phone calls from debt collectors asking you to pay, demanding you pay, threatening you, all kinds of emotional manipulation to try and get money out of you. That's number one. Number two, you might be seeing collection attempts or past due debt reporting on your credit report, affecting your credit score. That's type number two. And then you might have court action. You might be getting sued. You might have a judgment against you. You might be having your wages garnished or your bank account seized, something like that. That's court action, and that is type number three. There's a different limit for each one. Let's go through those right now. So first of all, there's the issue of debt collection communications. And the general rule is that there is no specific limit on the amount of time a debt collector has in order to send you a letter or to make a phone call to you, except if they send you a letter or make a phone call and they fail to tell you that the debt is too old for them to sue you on, that the debt is so old that court action is barred, and we'll talk about that in a moment. If they fail to tell you that, they may be breaking the law. They probably are breaking the law. And if you get a letter about a debt that's too old for them to sue you on and it fails to tell you that they are not going to be able to sue you because it's so old, if they fail to mention that in the letter, then you may have a right to sue them and put money in your pocket. So that's important to know. Every communication with a debt collector, if it's a letter, you should keep it. If it's a phone call and you answer it, you should log it. Don't say anything, but listen and make sure that you write down exactly what they say, because if they break the law, you can sue them. So they have no express limit on time as long as they make that disclosure if it's too old to be the subject of court action. Now, the second thing is the issue of credit reporting. And a lot of people get this wrong. A lot of people make mistakes about how long the credit reporting time limit is. So pay attention to this. And the reason people make mistakes is because they get confused. They get the credit reporting confused with the court action, because there's different time limits for each. For a credit report, your time limit is governed by federal law, the FCRA, which governs credit reporting. And the time limit contained in the FCRA for most types of debt is 7 years. So, and that 7 years starts from the time when the loan went into default, meaning it was the last payment, or after the last payment was due, the next payment that was missed and never brought current. That's your starting point. And then from 7 years after that is when that debt is supposed to roll off of your credit report. That trade line is supposed to be deleted in its entirety. So a debt that you first missed 7 years ago, if you never brought it current, that debt will vanish from your credit report after year 7. If it doesn't, you have a right to send a dispute letter. And if the credit reporting agency doesn't correct it, then you can sue the agency or possibly even the creditor who gave them false information. What you might find is that you'll find sometimes credit reporting or creditors on a credit report will falsify the debt, the date of the original debt, and that's called re-aging. It's illegal. And if you dispute a if you dispute the date on a debt, you can get that corrected. If they fail to correct it and they're wrong, and you can prove the debt actually is more than 7 years old and it should be removed, you may be able to sue for that. But you also have a right to dispute up to that point. If they fail to respond to the dispute, that's when you can sue. So it's 7 years for most debts. Now, there's a couple of exceptions. It's 10 years generally for bankruptcy, and other things like judgments can stay on there for longer. There are some limited exceptions for other types of debt, but most people won't have that problem. It doesn't apply to most people. So just remember, 7 years for credit reporting, 10 years if it's a bankruptcy. Third, court action. Now, this is the one that a lot of people get confused about, and the reason is because there's not one uniform federal law that applies to here. It is variable state by state and claim by claim. What I mean by that is it depends on the type of claim. Now, the time limit for court action is called a statute of limitations, and the time limit contained in the statute of limitations is the time that the creditor has to begin a lawsuit against you to collect money. And that starts at the time the non-payment occurs. That starts at the time the breach of the payment obligation occurs. So if you missed a payment 5 years ago, that 5-year period is when the time starts to tick. Now, when does it end? In Florida, there is a 4-year limitations period on new lawsuits or a 5-year limitation on new lawsuits. It depends on the type of claim. If it's a standard breach of contract based on a written contract, based on a broken promise to pay that is contained in a written contract, they have 5 years to sue on that. If they let 5 years go by and fail to sue, they can no longer file a lawsuit, or more precisely, if they do, you have a valid defense, you can get the case thrown out, and that might be a debt collection violation as well. The other types of claims that have a shorter time limit, the 4-year time limit, are two types of claims called account stated and open account. And generally speaking, those are the type of claims where they say, well, we had these kind of business dealings, or we sent them regular statements and there was no disagreement about the amount, therefore we agree the amount was what it is and they haven't paid it, and therefore we have a right to sue. It's 4 years from the breach of the payment obligation there. Now, what if you have a contract? What if you have a debt that arose in another state? What if you have a debt that was due to be repaid in another state? In those cases, you might find that the law of another state applies. There are 50 states and 50 different statutes of limitations, plus the District of Columbia. So, and each state has, oftentimes different limitations for different types of claims. So you might find that a different statute of limitations applies to your case if a contract says another state law applies, if the debt obligation arose or the payment obligation was broken in another state, then you may find another limitations period applies. Generally speaking, Florida will apply the shorter applicable limitations period. So it's going to depend, basically depending on the unique facts of your case, you may find a shorter or longer term apply, but you need to know that generally speaking in Florida, it's a 4-year or 5-year limitation depending on what type of claim. Account stated, open account is 4 years. Breach of written contract is 5 years. Breach of a non-written contract, like an oral agreement, that's also 4 years. So again, depending on the type of claim. Now, that last one is also very confusing because, again, a lot of people get it confused with the credit reporting. So remember, it's a breach of the right to sue. But here's the thing. That's only the time limit. The statute of limitations only applies to the time to begin a lawsuit. Once a lawsuit is filed, if they file the day before the statute expires, that lawsuit can proceed, and it doesn't matter how long it takes to conclusion. Once it's filed, it can go to conclusion. And then here's the other problem. I get a lot of people calling me about old judgments when they get their wages garnished or when they get their bank account seized. And they say, well, I thought that was too old for them to enforce. Once a judgment is entered, the time limit is 20 years and it can be renewed in Florida. So that means if you have a judgment against you, there effectively is no limit for how long your wages can be garnished. There is effectively no limit for how long your bank accounts can be seized if that judgment is against you and has not been satisfied. Now, there's another way of attacking that, You can also, besides settling it, besides satisfying it, you can also seek to set it aside if it was entered without you being validly served. That's usually pretty difficult to do, but it's possible. I've done it successfully in some cases, but it can often be hard to do, and that's an analysis we can undertake. But if a judgment has been entered, the statute of limitations is not relevant. That 4-year period, that 5-year period doesn't matter at all. What does matter is that the judgment lasts for 20 years. And so that can follow you around effectively forever. If you've got a judgment against you, you need to attack that problem. So I hope this has been helpful for you. If it has, leave a like, share it with somebody you might who might need to know. If you have a comment or a question I haven't answered in this video, drop it in the comment section. We do everything we can to answer questions, either in a video. In fact, this is a response to a comment we got, or we'll just drop an answer in the comment section. Subscribe if you want more content like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.